Hey everyone, welcome to Rolling Up My Sleeves. That's mostly what I'm going to do when I wear a jumper. It's a thing. It's kind of my jam. Hey everyone, welcome to Watch It, Paint It. In this video I want to talk about a little secret the army painter have been keeping from us all. Now I say from us all because I myself, Mike, the entire paint development team did not know about this, and I assume most of you out there did not know either. So we didn't know about this when we were asked to join the paint development team, after we'd signed joining the paint development team, and after we'd signed the non-disclosure agreement. In fact, we didn't know about any of this until it arrived in the post. Nails here. So once we'd got the little boxes in our hand, we were in on the little secret. Now, some of you had already guessed in the comments I was looking at on Army Painter's little teaser video. I've also looked in our own comments, and some of you have guessed this might be coming. I'm not going to lie, once I opened these boxes, I was genuinely as excited, maybe more excited than I was when speed paints originally arrived in our hands. Hey everyone. In this video, I am freaking excited. Guys, I have been waiting 2 years plus for this. So guys, I'm sure you want to know what it is, so I'm not going to waste... I'm going to miss my cup. Now guys, I'm sure you want to know what it is, so I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Guys, speed paints. Guys, the Army Painter have been working on metallic speed paints, and as far as I know, that is the first type of this paint out there, single coat metallics. Now, let me reiterate, as I've done with all the PDT videos so far, these are at the prototype stage, and there's only 3 colors currently available for us to test. That is silver, gold, and copper. And what I wanted to do this in video is reveal that information for you, because I was genuinely excited. I might have had a little bit of wee come out when I got them in my hands, and I think a lot of you out there will also be excited. So, in this video, much like when we first got speed paints, we want to do some experiments, and this time it's not going to be particularly experimental, is it? It's just going to be putting paint on a miniature, which I guess is just painting. But we'll do that. So I've got 3 little Necrons here, just like when we did the experiments with the silver base coat with some speed paints on in the past. We'll bring those up at the end so we can compare, but yeah, there's nothing more to say. Let's just get some paint on some miniatures and start looking how this comes out. A lot of you probably know in the UK it's now absolutely freezing cold, and I'm going to be brave. I am going to risk my life. The commitment to bringing content to you is immeasurable. I'm going to head out now and prime these miniatures in the freezing cold. Right, with these Necrons primed in Army Painter's matte white, the suggested primer for speed paint, we're going to start with the new silver. They haven't got names yet, so, oh, they do have names, I just don't know them yet, and they're not printed on the bottle, so good luck to remembering what they are. But we're just going to see how it applies to the Necron, and it's fairly similar to any of the speed paints so far. Now, do remember, as I mentioned, these are prototypes, so the flow's not being balanced or anything like that. It's not going on quite right compared to the production speed paints we're used to, but it's not going on badly. You're getting a nice feel for it. It goes on thick and fast, and you're very much only going to need 1 layer. Next, we'll test the gold, just to see how that goes on. As I thought I'd demonstrate coming out of the bottle in case that's of any use to anybody, but just like speed paint. And then it goes on, and you can instantly see the sort of metallic sparkle. There's little particles in it. I think it's aluminium, whatever it is. I don't know the exact formula, but that tends to be how it works, doesn't it? A little bit of real metal inside these paints. You can see it glistening in the light. Once again, still only prototype, but it's flowing on roughly like contrast. And third and final metallic speed paint available is this copper color, and you can see it's a deep red to begin with. It's very, very red, I'd say this copper is. We'll see obviously as it dries and see what effect that has, but once again, goes on just like any old speed paint, getting it on nice and thick and hard and fast. Certainly not slowing down my paint job here. What do you think to this colour? It was a lot redder than I expected as I was applying it to the Necron, but yeah, we'll see in a second as it dries and see the final colour that it produces. With a few hours now passed to let this completely dry, we can have a look at this new silver speed paint and see how it applied and looked on that Necron. As you can see, it got really, really good coverage. I just put 1 thick, fast layer on. I don't see any white poking through, which is great. As speed paint, I normally paint a little bit fast, and there's normally a couple of bits here and there that I've missed, but this has gone on really well, especially given it's a prototype. Now, the actual paint job, I think it's lacking a little bit of contrast. You can see some in some areas of this, and it definitely pulls away from the highlights. I think personally my feedback to Army Painter is going to be that it could be a little bit stronger in the actual pull and the contrast. There's definitely places it's worked. There's some really, really dark areas in the recesses, but there's other bits where it just doesn't look that impressive. I think overall it's a fantastic start. Bear in mind, it is just prototype. It's still very much under test and scrutiny by the paint development team, but it's certainly, as I said, a little bit. We came out when this arrived in the post, and it's held up its end of the bargain. I think this is a very, very, very fast way of painting metals. We will compare it to the experiment we did last year, where this is a silver primed miniature painted with something like Gravelord grey. It's a very different effect, isn't it? It's not as sparkly. It's very shiny, though. It's very much like almost like plate metal, like a sheet of metal, isn't it, as opposed to the glisteningly jewelry style of the new speed paint. Now, they're going to have positives and negatives to each, aren't they? I personally think it's subjective, but I really like the plate mail look, especially given it's got much stronger contrast, which I just discussed could be a little bit better in the new silver speed paint. But you are going to have to prime the miniature completely in silver, and that isn't always going to be something you want to do. You'll have to paint the silver on top and then add contrast slash speed paint on top of it, and that's just going to take a little bit more time. The speed paint was thick and fast, and it was just like any other speed paint. It was so easy to add on top. Next, we'll just take a quick second to look at the new speed paint gold. I think this came out much better than the silver. This is actually my favorite one. I think the contrast level's a lot better. I think the metal looks a lot more like metal rather than glistening silver, which just looks a bit like almost like toy-like silver, not actual metal, whereas this a little bit more closely resembles gold. In my opinion, I think this is quite subjective. I'd love to know what you guys think in the comments below. If we compare it to the experimental version we did, remember this was actually contrast. This is Iyanden yellow, which is a very bright gold, so don't look too much at the actual color difference, but look at the sort of the actual overall effect. And I do really like the new gold speed paint, and I must admit, silver is relatively easy to paint using Army Painter's silvers, but gold is painful. Every gold I've ever used is relatively painful to paint, and this speed paint was not. This was the easiest gold I've ever painted, and it may be quite different to putting silver and then speed paint on top, but it was much easier than having to do 2 layers, and it was just actually fantastic. I think it would be my default gold. I'll use this all the time. I think it was just better than using any gold out of a pot. I may still find times I want to spray silver on and then apply contrast slash speed paint over the top, because I like that effect under certain circumstances. It's just like anything else. We're just adding tools to our arsenal. Then third and finally, we have this new copper. It's a lot redder than I thought, and it's very interesting. It's a nice, unique color. I think it looks very unique and not something I've seen before. It's definitely another metallic color shade that I can add to very verbosely metallic miniatures, and it just gives another, another color, makes it a little bit interesting, something to pop the details out. Once again, it was speed paint. It went on like a piece of absolute cake. Super quick, super easy, and again, the contrast worked well on this, hasn't it? It's really pulled away and shown all of the details back into this miniature. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. Don't think there's any white bits again. It was really easy, just one quick layer. So that's my take, guys. Very subjective, obviously. I'm impressed with the speed. I'm impressed with the fact we've got metallic speed paints. But what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments. So what I would like to do, I think, given that I really love this silver with Gravelord grey on top, and I think this one's not as interesting, what I would like to do is go now prime some up in silver and paint the 3 new speed paint metallics over silver and see what effect that has. So let's go do that. So we've done exactly that. Now over the next few clips, you're going to see speed paint on matte white on the left, speed paint on silver, Army Painter's color primer in the middle, and then this is Gravelord grey on the right. And the first and foremost thing I notice is we've got the shine back in the middle entry. It's a little bit darker because the base coat, the primer, is dark, so that's made it a darker grey, but it's given it that shine. The gold's exactly the same. It's shiny, and just like the silver, you've got that more realistic colour of, I mean, there's all sorts of silvers and golds, but I really like both the silver and gold now on this silver primer. It's got a little bit of sparkle still to it, but it's got that shine, that realistic metallic look to it, and it's become I think this is the one for me. It's got a nice little bit of contrast. It's got a really good metallic shine to it. Now, having said that, you're still going to find that the one on matte white, is just the fastest solution, unless you can prime it on silver. And there are miniatures you can do, like these Necrons. They're no problem to prime in silver, but a lot of the time you're going to need to prime in white because there's going to be non-metallic parts to paint, and you're going to have to paint matte white on top of those to then build up the normal color underneath and that sort of thing. So you're going to have the reverse problem. But if you're able to put silver and you've got the time, then you can make it look that little bit better. Speaking of realism and actually painting miniatures, I went and grabbed myself a Zombicide Survivor that was mostly wearing armor and just went and primed this in matte white. So this is painted up properly from matte white because it's got a bunch of colors that aren't silver as well. So we were able to test out a few more of these prototype speed paints. So do bear in mind all of this miniature was painted with prototype paints, but you get a good look and feel for how that silver is going to look. But more importantly, and this is something you couldn't do, is see how fast I did it. It was just a piece of cake. I then decided the most obvious thing from that was Zombicide miniatures absolutely suck. So I went and grabbed myself some Necrons. And being part of the PDT, I was able to talk to Army Painter and let them know that the silver wasn't pulling away, the contrast wasn't strong enough for my liking. And they let me know, in fact, that they work differently to normal speed paints. They're sort of a 2-tone level as opposed to the normal 3-tone. And what that means is the contrast isn't quite strong. It's more subtle, it's more realistic. But if you want to add extra contrast, you can do it yourself by painting washers on top, slowing it down a little bit, but you're getting more contrast if you want. Now, that leads me on to realize two things. This doesn't reactivate like normal speed paints do. That problem's gone after this cures after a certain amount of time. It seemed like about 24 hours was good, but I didn't test exact minutes. And on top of that, I went and thought, oh, hello, let's do some more slap chop. So I primed this in Army Painter's Color Primer Army Grey and then dry brush some white on. So that's going to leave the recesses much darker than that matte white, adding some secret contrast, and I think you can see that here. The contrast a lot stronger than in some of the test models. I wanted to just make sure I wasn't imagining it, and I grabbed another one. This time I primed it in Army Painter's matte black and then dry brushed up to white, just using slap chop. There's videos on the channel about that if you're unfamiliar with that technique, but I'm basically darkening down the recesses and giving some bonus contrast. You can clearly see it on the shamrock green there that it's still got that black recess, those shadows for free, and it's done the same on the metallics. It's just increased that contrast just ever so slightly. So this is a real potential for being some new slap chop juice and allowing us to paint metallics with the same technique. But overall, guys, that was it. That was a fun. That did actually turn into more of an experiment than I expected, and I was able to feed back some information to Army Painter. I think the biggest take home from all of this is the metallics aren't going to be quite as strong in contrast as the normal speed paints, but you're still speed paints and they're still ease paints. That's one thing I really noticed painting up all of these miniatures. Not only were they fast, they were just so easy. You didn't need to do special primes if you want. You can just do it in matte white. You didn't have to base layer it with silver to get them sparkly anymore. You didn't have to add washers. You didn't have to highlight them back up. It was one coat and done. And yes, you can make the metallics better if you want. Again, tools in our arsenal. Better painters, people with more time or people who want to get better paint jobs might take the time to undercoat in silver and then paint these on top, and you will get a slightly better result. But if time is of the essence, then there you go, one coat and done. You can't complain about that. I'm thrilled to have these being added to the collection. I'm going to find many, many uses for them. But guys, as always, be part of the paint development team yourself. Let us know your feedback, thoughts on what you've just seen in this video, as well as, guys, these are only 3 colours. They're going to make some more. Let's speculate. What colours do you think they'll make in metallics, and what would you like to see? Guys, that's everything for this video. Thank you ever so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Metallic speed paints. Boom! Mic drop. So there we have it, guys. All 3 of the new speed paint miniatures. This isn't it. He snuck in. This is an imposter.